Well, good morning. I hope you're doing well. We're back in the world of Against the Storm, and with several failures and the knowledge I'd gained from them, I was determined to make this settlement a success. I wasn't certain I could, and I knew the Queen's patience was already growing thin. But there was no other option. This settlement must succeed. With that in mind, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. These villagers weren't going to get a passive viceroy standing in the background watching their lives. No, I was going to be right there with them, watching and coordinating every move, keeping my eye out for every opportunity to advance them. But would it be enough? What if I made a fatal error? The thought of returning to the Queen once more in disgrace shored up my resolve. I would not fail her this time. To my surprise, she came bearing gifts, a new cornerstone. But which one to choose? The woodcutter's prayer sounded nice, but the villagers demanded something to ease their senses, and the cooking steam seemed to be perfect. Very well, we'll select that one. Ah, new settlers have arrived, although why is beyond me. Still, I don't have it in me to turn them down, and they do come bearing gifts of food and clay. I wasn't certain it was wise to cut into that forbidden glade so soon. Would the settlers be ready for whatever lay beyond the trees? Would I be ready to lead them if the worst arose from it? There weren't many options, though, as the danger seemed to surround them. We would simply have to be ready. In the meantime, the mundane had to be attended to. New houses for our newest residents needed to be built. They also needed roads to travel. A new woodcutter's camp would be a welcome addition for our newest beaver residents, and to keep the fires lit. Of course, I also had to make sure that the people were working hard and had work to do. Being a viceroy was exhausting. With the new woodcutters camp up and running, it was time to expand and make space for more buildings. The wood would also be welcome for construction and warmth. Seeing the need for space, I had the other woodcutters cease opening the glade to focus on clearing nearby trees. Every little bit of land we could claim, I figured, would be important later, though I had no idea how important it would be. With the everyday work of a viceroy complete, I paused to look at the Queen's latest orders. However, none of them seemed doable at the moment, and, with a sigh of resignation, I put off making a selection. I'm sure she was most displeased at my hesitation. Instead, I sat back and marveled at the villagers, hard at work. They were quite industrious, as determined as I was to carve out a little home in these harsh environments. I wondered what they thought of their viceroy. Did they know about my hesitation to accept an order from the Queen? Perhaps I should stop sitting on my hands and choose one. After all, they weren't going away, nor were they going to change. Finally, we'd cut through the first dangerous glade to be met with multiple events. A rather dangerous-looking flower demanded exploring, and I sent a villager to go study it. A large encampment of survivors was tucked away in a corner. New villagers were always welcome, so I sent a party out to greet them. And a stack of abandoned supplies tempted us with goodies. At the same time, a second glade was opened, and with that, another of the Queen's orders were complete. The second glade had a wealth of mushrooms in it, as well as other mysteries, but before we could explore it, we had other things to do. The Queen had new orders for us, and we had to pick one. We could set out to explore the new glade. It appeared to have a wealth of things that we could use, from farmland to meats to the mushrooms. It was going to be very useful. Things were going well, at least better than the previous settlement. The village grew and expanded. The lizards were made happy because they had meat. More homes were built to house the newcomers. Each step seemed to draw us ever closer to the elusive goal of creating a fully self-sustaining village. The villagers weren't quite happy yet, but at least they weren't complaining or leaving. Our territory had even grown big enough to require a second hearth. This was very promising. When the villagers uncovered another plot of fertile land, I celebrated with them. They would not want for anything anymore. However, in my eager joy to build and expand the ever-growing village, I failed to notice the slowly growing ire of the Queen. Why ever was she angry when things were going so well? Then I noticed it. I had two orders, both requiring clothes. Clothes we were not yet making. I hurried to remedy the situation, setting workers to the task of making rain cloaks. I hoped it would be enough, and in time. But now, the outcome of the city wasn't so certain. As I waited for some sign that the cloaks were being made, I looked around at what we'd built so far. I sacrificed some of our hard-earned supplies to the hearth to negate any lingering negative effects from the forest. It seemed to help, though by how much, I wasn't certain. And as new villagers continued to pour in, I could only cross my fingers and hope that our food supply would continue to hold. Through it all, the villagers continued to work. They took everything in stride, with more confidence than their viceroy. Nothing seemed to faze them as they diligently followed my every command. With full bellies and warm beds, they seemed quite content. and oblivious to the possible outcome should I fail to make the queen happy. For my part, I set to work looking for ways to make them even happier. New houses were in order, and there was a perfect spot for them right across from the new hearth. That would make them happy. My patience was finally rewarded, and I was able to deliver one of the orders to the queen. She didn't seem particularly pleased, but at least she was somewhat less aggravated with us now. Two more orders complete. Dare I hope, dare I dream that we might actually make it through this. But of course, the queen had other plans. Her next orders were not so easy for me to complete, and all I could do was hope that perhaps a new set of settlers would arrive, and I would have enough lizards to complete one of her orders. At last my patience was rewarded. New settlers arrived, and with them, new lizards. I could finally complete the next of the queen's orders. Her final orders would not be so easy, though. And after looking over the options, I finally settled on one that seemed the most likely to be successful. However, to my surprise, I was a lot closer to that goal than I thought. I already had 3 of the 4 ancient tablets I needed, which meant I needed to open one more dangerous glade. The completion of another set of orders bought us a little bit of time. Time we were going to need. With the woodcutters working at full bar, I knew I risked the anger of the forest. But if I didn't, I risked the anger of the queen. The wait was excruciating. So in the meantime, I did everything I could to make the villagers as comfortable as possible. Whether or not we failed, they were at least going to be happy with their viceroy. Surprisingly, they had quite a bit of food, but I wanted to make sure they didn't go hungry. I set to work making sure every resource that was available to them was used. I put villagers to work at the herbalist camp, something I'd forgotten to do. I built more houses because we had far too many homeless villagers. And despite the Queen's anger, she offered us another cornerstone. How could I refuse? Each step brought us closer to victory or defeat. But I had gained some trust from the village through hard work and a few mistakes. At this point, it was more about making them happy, these tiny villagers I could see, and less about making her happy. However, I did notice that one wood camp was not going to be enough to get through that glade in time. So, I pulled the second wood camp and put them together. Hopefully, with 2 camps, it would go much faster. And while I was building new houses for the villagers, it happened. We broke through that forbidden glade. I was drawn to the large structure inside it, a dark gate. Its very presence was foreboding, and dark clouds began gathering around the village. I wasn't sure what would happen, but I knew we had to deal with it, and fast. I was dread to send my little villagers there, but even as I thought so, the first villager died. All I could do now was hope the villagers I'd sent would be fast enough to contain whatever power was within the structure before the whole village became forfeit. The glade itself was a wealth of goods, with abandoned containers, vegetables to harvest, and meats to gather. If we survived this strange gate, it would be a great resource for the village, sustaining them for some time. Even with death looming over them, the villagers continued to work. I was amazed at their resolve, and gratified to know that despite the grimness of their situation, they would continue on. In the middle of this, more villagers arrived. Perhaps I should have sent them packing to the citadel, but I didn't have the heart to tell them they couldn't stay, even if it meant they might die. Of course, not all of the villagers were pleased. The lizards, less inclined to be happy, were muttering their discontent of the situation. I could only hope that destroying whatever power the Dark Gate had would improve their mood. And then it happened. A 4th tablet was found. I rushed the order to the Queen to see what she would say. She was still rather miffed at me for taking so long. However, I had completed her tasks, the settlement had survived, and begrudgingly, she awarded me with several items to make life easier for this village and the next ones to come. Yes, I was now a proper viceroy, wherever my next adventure lay, whatever the next village would be. I knew I would be ready for it. And now we bid farewell to the little village that survived, and to the game against the storm. Thank you, Gus, for this wonderful present. I really love it. And thank you to everybody who's watched. I really appreciate you. Until next time, bye for now.